Hi everyone, you're all very welcome to today's webinar, Healthy Christmas, Self-Care for Body and Mind this festive season. Very happy to have you all join. I can see a few just coming in there, but we'll kick off and get started anyway, as we have a lot to pack in today with our guest speaker, Niamh O'Connell. My name is Francesca Fitzpatrick, as you'll see on screen, and I work in the Thrive Wellbeing Hub and CA support. And I suppose with every opportunity like this, we just like to remind people that there is support and services here and available to all our members, students and their extended families in the Thrive Wellbeing Hub and indeed in CA support as well. And with the time of year that's in it, I just thought I would mention as well that all donations are appreciated to CA support, and I'll pop more details in the chat box as well around that and the work of CA support as we go through. As we go through the webinar today with Niamh, we do welcome your engagement. We're happy for you to pop your comments into the chat box and your questions into the Q&A section as well. I know I got some questions already, so I've passed these on to Niamh, and I know she's going to address them as well towards the end of her presentation. So really, it's a welcome to all of you, our members, our students, our chartered family and friends of the Institute, and as well to my colleagues and those joining us who work in the Institute as well on this call today. You're all very welcome. We really hope today's session is going to be a relaxing one where we can enjoy all that Niamh has to share with us. Niamh O'Connell, who I'm very excited to introduce to you all, is a nutrition and lifestyle consultant. She runs a number of wellness programs out of her clinic, the Wellness Clinic, as well as individual programs there as well. She's a regular contributor. You may have seen her on screen or heard her voice on radio. You might recognize her from that. And really, I know even just from setting up the webinar today, she's really passionate about just sharing her knowledge and expertise on all things well-being. So we are very happy to have you, Niamh, and I will let you take it from here. Thank you so much.
Thanks a million, Francesca, and thanks to Chris behind the scenes with all the tech setup for today. So I'm delighted to be joining you here today, and here we are in December. Can anybody believe where we are in the year already? It seems to have flown in. I know from my point of view, I'm a busy mom of 3 and I run the Wellness Clinic, as Francesca said, but today is really about you and helping you find ways to recharge and regenerate your energy in this midwinter time. And we will go through lots of nice ideas for minding yourself, for calming down the stress levels, and for really just pacing yourself as you go through the next few weeks, which might be busy for you with family responsibilities or with social commitments, etc. So I'll get straight into my slides because it's all there for you there. And you will have a copy of the slides after the talk, so take notes if you feel like it. But I'd also like to invite you during this time to get up and move around, especially if today you're going to be sitting most of the day. Please put the screen somewhere visible and get up and pace or do some squats, or just put your feet up and get comfortable if you're able to do so. Some people I would even encourage, if it's possible, to get us now on your earbuds and go for a walk, maybe 10 or 20 minutes away from where you are and 10 or 20 minutes back. The first slide presentation is 40 minutes, and then we will have about 20 minutes Q&A. And we'll finish up just before 1 o'clock. So please, whatever you need to do, whether it's resting or moving, look after your needs right now during this session. This is my invitation for you. So as Francesca mentioned, this is organised by the Thrive Wellbeing Hub, which have a fantastic programme of events throughout the year. And I'm delighted to be here closing it for you with some self-care ideas. And nothing here is very demanding. Nothing takes more than 5 minutes to enact. It's all about adding in some nice, healthy or restorative options on top of what you're already doing. Because as we know, if we're to have a sustainably healthy and well life, we need to make these small changes over increments rather than jump into a huge, big lifestyle change, which is very hard to actually sustain. So I'm going to explain about, I hope you can all see that slide there. We're on the green slide. I'm just going to explain my background and my qualifications in this area. If Francesca can just let me know everything's okay there with the slides.
Yep, that all looks good. Thanks, Niamh.
Thanks a million. So I began my training in college. I studied languages. French and Spanish were my absolute passions as a school student, and then into my college years. I also speak Italian pretty well, and spent a year away studying in Spain. In my 20s, I was also very interested in musical theatre. So I went on and did another 3 years full-time training in musical theatre and dance, which was great for my energy levels and fitness. It was the first time I really did any kind of exercise, and dance was my only kind of form of exercise I enjoyed. So I learned, the connection between my body and my brain, because up to that point, up to about 22, I really was just working through my brain and not really connected into my body. And I know that's something a lot of people like yourselves who work in industries where you're using your brain all day long, you can be a little detached from your body and from its needs. So I opened a theatre school for children. I ran that and had a couple of children myself, and then had a third in my late 30s. But back when I was 30, my husband was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, which is an autoimmune disease affecting his gut. And it has since migrated now up the digestive tract to Crohn's disease. So he was suffering already with symptoms for a few years, and they'd been getting worse and worse. And it really was a wake-up call for us as a young family and a young couple with 2 young kids, how much his stress and his sleep affected his physical health. They're 2 of his biggest triggers. So it became a real interest of mine to try and help him with his symptoms alongside his amazing medical team in St. James's Hospital and his medication. But there were lots of things we were able to do to help him sleep better, help him manage stress, help him relax his body, because his nervous system was on edge, and that was making his autoimmune disease worse. So it was so great to see him implement some changes, and also change a lot of the nutrition we had, because we were living a lot on processed foods in our 20s. Making these changes and seeing these improvements led me to go and then study a diploma in nutrition and lifestyle coaching with the Institute of Health Sciences. And then I opened my business when I had my 3rd child. I was 37, I think, at the time, 2016, sorry. And so I've been working 7 years now, one-to-one with people, and I got into corporate workplace wellness back in 2018. And I have worked with all different industries, from pharmaceutical to financial. I also do some talks for schools and community groups. And most recently, I've been working with the money advice and budgeting service. So we just had a training day there on Friday with their senior managers, where they learned lots of more self-care habits to use. I've also been working for the last couple of years with Accounting Technicians Ireland. So I'm quite familiar, I think, with the demands of your industry and the different times of the year and the deadlines you have to hit, and the huge stress load that you have as well. So I hope I'm well placed to give you some advice and tips today. When I began working with people, I realized quickly it wasn't just about their exercise habits or what they were eating. Stress played a huge part in it too. So I went and I studied a certificate in the therapeutic use of mindfulness. And for me, mindfulness, and for you, I'm sure as well, is not about lighting a candle and sitting for a half hour and breathing and meditating, because A, my brain won't let me do that, because I've quite an active brain. And B, I just don't get the time or space to do that either. So mindfulness, as I teach it, is very much in 1 or 2 minute bites, things that you can do while sitting at your desk just before lunch, as long as you're taking your lunch, and things you can do to begin the day in a good focused way, or to end the day and bring down the stress levels. So it's very practical and very simple to build into your lifestyle. I'm also a member of the Federation of Nutritional Therapists in the UK. So today's theme, it is general well-being. We're talking about physical and mental health, and just scratching the surface of these huge areas. I do other webinars in more detail on these topics, but let's bring it back for a moment to the big festival that's happening in a few weeks, which is Christmas for most of us, or if you have another faith, you may celebrate Hanukkah or something else. But generally it's a time of year where we work, and then we get a few days off. And for a lot of us who are working and burning the candle at both ends, we may find that during our time off, we just come down with an illness, or we're just exhausted and we're burnt out, and we don't get to really enjoy our days off. And one question I received was about this. So I'd like you to just reflect for a moment, and you can pop this in the chat box and we'll come to it at the end. What makes Christmas for you? What do you want to get from your Christmas time with your families and friends? Is it the build up to Christmas? Is it attending some social events, or maybe hosting? Is it just about sitting in your pajamas watching a movie? Is it visiting places that are lit up for Christmas and seeing different lights and decorations? And if you imagine, if we could remove all the financial pressures of having to deliver amazing gifts to our loved ones every year, if we could remove the stress of hosting and creating an amazing meal for people, or meals, or maybe having house guests, and if it was pared back to its most simple form, what would you want out of your Christmas? Your dream ideal Christmas with no pressures or stresses or responsibilities. How would you spend that in that dream life where nobody was depending on you? So just take a moment to think about that for yourself. Maybe something's jumping out, or maybe you're a little lost and you're not really sure. So for some people, it could be just having time to sleep and catch up on their sleep. For others, it might be very social and catching up with loads of people you haven't seen in a while. And the idea behind this reflection exercise is to really let you see what are your values and what could you work towards putting into place for yourself this Christmas. And we're going to talk a little later about possibly letting go of some traditions that no longer serve you, that maybe take up your time, energy, or money when you might rather do something else. So it's important to note at this time of the year, we are in hibernation mode. We are mammals, even though we forget it and we don't really think of ourselves as mammals in the sense of bears hibernating, etc. But we really are mammals, and our bodies are not able to cope with the cold. So we crave warmth at this time. We have less physical energy because the days are lower, the sun is lower, the days are shorter. So we have naturally less physical energy, and we have more of a need to sleep. And these are things that we need to indulge in order to recharge our battery, so that in 6 months' time, in high summer, we have the energy to go about our business and to take part in all those outdoor and activities that we like to enjoy at summertime. We also crave more warming and comfort foods and heavier, stodgier meals at this time of year. And this is a normal, healthy biological reaction. We will also store fat at this time of the year to keep us going, because that's our normal biological rhythm. And it's important to note, if you're trying to still eat raw, fresh green salads every day and you're really struggling with that, it's okay not to eat those cold foods anymore. You can cook everything. You can make stews and soups and curries with all your vegetables and have your nutrition that way. You don't need to be eating foods that don't appeal to you at this time of year. And then this picture is here to show you the pressure that we see when we're looking at our screens. If we're engaging on Facebook or social media with friends and family, our feeds, and I know mine is, and I'm staying away from it because of this, my feed is full of people's Christmas trees going up, or shopping trips, or trips to Lapland or Lithuania. And people are celebrating this time of year and spending money and showing off about it on social media. And there is an intense pressure that comes from from ourselves, to try and keep up with all that. So if you imagine speaking to a friend, they might do 1 or 2 amazing Christmas events in the whole month. But because your feed is full of 50 friends' amazing highlights, you're comparing their highlights with your messy reality, where you're struggling to get going in the mornings because you're feeling a little more tired and you're not getting dinner on the table. So you're phoning takeaways or resorting to frozen pizza. I know that's something I struggle with. And we're always feeling this pressure to have everything perfect. So I want this to be your wake-up call to realize, A, you don't have to engage with that. You don't have to watch other people have their fun. You can switch off or cut back on your social media use, and that will immediately cut down on your stress and anxiety and feeling that you need to catch up and keep up with other people. And 2, that you can put your focus into the areas that actually mean something to you. Maybe you're just going along with certain activities because you've always done it, or because you feel you should, and maybe they don't ring your bell anymore. So maybe you can come up with some new ideas, or just no ideas, and have a few days in your pajamas and just binge watch some programs or docu-series on Netflix and really restore and regenerate yourself that way. So I really like this saying here: winter is a season of recovery and preparation, by Paul Theroux, the writer. And if you imagine an apple tree, if you have an apple tree in your garden, or if you've ever grown up near an apple tree, you would not expect that apple tree to bear apples every single day of the year. We accept that nature has a period of dormancy where plants and trees go dormant. They stop growing, they stop moving, they stop synthesizing, they stop working basically, and they rest and they just suffer and get through the icy winter times. They hunker down, the sap gets right down underground to keep it fresh and safe rather than staying up under the bark. It's actually fascinating how trees work. Judi Dench did an amazing program on them a couple of years back. So trees will bring their sap down underground and they will just lie dormant for maybe 4 or 6 months, depending on the variety of tree. Why do we expect ourselves to be able to perform at 100% every day of the year or every day when we're on? Why do we think that we don't get a break, or why do we push on through? And unfortunately, it's become normal to be burnt out and very busy and overworked, and to work longer hours and to skip our lunch breaks. But this is not good for us. And we will all find it comes back to catch us up in the end, whether that's getting sick during your annual leave during the summer, or maybe finding you can't enjoy Christmas every year because you're so wound up from the previous few months. You need 5 weeks to de-stress rather than just 5 days. Okay, so we need to begin now by really putting into practice some good rest and restorative habits. So that means maybe going to bed a little earlier, maybe switching off the screens a little earlier as well, maybe saying no to some of the commitments that we actually don't want to go through with. So the work-life balance is huge, and it's something elusive that nobody can give us the perfect key to, and it looks different for everyone at every different time of the year and time of their life. But it really has to start with your mindset that you're going to prioritize this balance for yourself, and what areas you would like to prioritize. Maybe it's your own physical health you need to spend a little more time looking after, or maybe it's your family's mental health you need to spend a little more energy on. And using that word no, which is so scary to use, but also so freeing when we learn that we actually don't have to run around and try and keep everyone happy all the time. It really must start with ourselves. So the 4 main areas, as I see it, for good mental and physical health would be good nutrition. So eating foods that are as nutritious as possible to feed our body the right fuel that it needs. Obviously with our favorite snacks and treats added in there too, especially coming up to Christmas, and enjoying them with no guilt. Getting enough sleep. And as I mentioned already, we need more sleep at this time of year, and really not feeling guilty about taking a nap or sleeping in later at the weekend, or whatever way we can catch up on our sleep. Moving our bodies. And just before I logged on with Chris and Francesca this morning, I got away from my house, put on my jacket, and I walked 6 minutes away and 6 minutes back in the sun. And it was just a 12-minute quick walk, but I was able to fit it in because everything else was ready to go. And that's how I have to get my exercise these days, especially if I want to get out in daylight. It's quick, short bursts, and I pound the pavements, and then I'm back on the laptop or with the family. And maybe that's how you have to fit exercise in if you don't have the luxury of being able to go to a gym for a full hour a few times a week, etc. Healthy lifestyle habits here would be things like looking at your alcohol and smoking and anything else that might hamper your health. And then managing stress in very practical ways, such as keeping your schedule clear so that you have lunch every day, maybe just engaging as well with people who bring you joy and boost you up, rather than people who drain you and suck your energy, and making a few more changes in how you spend your time to help manage your stress. So we're going to take each of those ideas and flesh them out a little. So nutrition, we're talking about eating foods in as close to their natural state as possible. So foods ideally that have not been processed or added to things or stored with a long shelf life and canned and frozen. If we can get fresh fruit and vegetables into our diet, that's fantastic. And one of the best ways, as I said, is to make a big pot of stew or soup or curry, which we'll get onto in a minute. We're looking to eat healthy fats. Okay, fats are good for us. And if you grew up through the 80s and heard the whole low-fat diet media push on those type of diets, you might feel a little nervous about including butter and olive oil and coconut oil or avocados or even eggs into your diet. But there has been so much research done in the last 20 and 30 years on the benefits of fats, and in fact, how essential they are for our brains. We're actually now seeing research that people who followed low-fat diets for 30, 40 years as they were adults, and maybe even younger if they started in their teens, are now suffering with some neurological conditions due to that lack of fat, and they're more prone to having issues such as Alzheimer's. So it's really important for our brain that we get good fats in our diet, and they also come from meat and oily fish, etc. Hydration is hugely important, and this is my cue to drink some water. And especially at this time of year, we don't sometimes like drinking cold water. So you could have hydration in the form of warm herbal teas, or drink warm water, or decaffeinated teas and coffees will all hydrate you as well. And then vitamin supplements, if needed, if indicated by your doctor, or if you see that your diet is definitely going to be mostly frozen processed foods for the month of December, you might also take a multivitamin just to give you anything you might be needing. And vitamins, I can get to this at the end during the Q&A as well. The best type of vitamin supplements are the ones that are directly taken from food and plant sources, rather than the synthetic ones that you might find in the generic supermarkets under their own brands. And you're also looking for probiotics and things that feed the gut. So we can get into that, like natural yogurt, buttermilk, any kind of fermented foods as well. And then, of course, to limit the things that stop us absorbing the nutrition in our foods, such as caffeine. So if you have an amazingly healthy fruit bowl for breakfast, but you also have a cappuccino at the same time, the caffeine in the cappuccino is actually stopping you absorbing most of the nutrition in your food. So it's good to wait an hour before or after your breakfast and all your meals before you have your caffeine. Sugar and alcohol both will inflame the body, and obviously we know too much of them are bad for us. So one of my quickest, easiest ways is to recommend you get a big casserole dish or a saucepan, maybe a slow cooker or a pressure cooker, and you get used to just throwing in either fresh or frozen chopped vegetables. And frozen, I'll tell you something that has really made my life easier, I've discovered this year: frozen chopped onions, because I used to really hate chopping onions. I hated the whole crying thing, and just the hard work that went into it too, and the time that it took. So I now buy all my onions frozen and chopped, and I get them delivered with my delivery from my supermarket every maybe 2 weeks. I fill my chest freezer and I work off that, and then I buy some fresh things to complement what I've bought from the supermarket as well. So that starts me preparing a healthy meal a lot easier than taking an onion and chopping it from raw, and then having to peel my carrots, and then having to peel my parsnips or whatever. So if you can cut corners and buy them frozen, they have almost as much nutrition as fresh, so don't be afraid of them. And you can put in a full chicken or chicken breasts or your ground meat or whatever you want to eat, or if you're vegetarian or vegan, lentils, beans, they all slow cook really well. And then at the end, if you're making a soup, you can puree it or leave it thick and chunky. And what I do is, when I have one large pot like this, I will serve it in different ways. So I might put half in the freezer, and then say if I've made a chili, it might get served over baked potatoes one day. It might be served over rice the next day with some grated cheese. The next day I might serve it to my children like nachos with tortilla chips and sour cream and guacamole, etc. So it's the same basic protein-rich meal, but served different ways, so it's not boring. So I hope you'll get some good ideas, and I can share some ideas at the end as well. And then a word, of course, on sweets and treats, because this is the season where we will be buying and eating boxes of biscuits and chocolates. And I think it's much better to enjoy these regularly without fuss, rather than to deprive ourselves and then binge on them and then feel like we need to detox. Okay, that's not healthy. That's quite disordered. So they should be not a big deal. They should not be under lock and key. They also shouldn't be filling your kitchen. But if you're buying things into the house, it's healthy to share them with the family, not be hiding them away for you to eat when everyone else is in bed, and enjoying them as part of a healthy, balanced diet. So food, and especially sugary treats, don't hold this big power and emotional drama around them. So if you've grown up, with all diet culture, which is hopefully changing now, I do see the tide is changing in favor of more balanced eating habits, although certain diets are still, always being promoted, and this is just one big money-making racket. I hope there are no foods that you label as bad and that you forbid yourself eating. I hope that you just feel comfortable around all foods and eat them with discipline and enjoyment and no guilt. Okay, that's what I hope for you this Christmas, is that you enjoy your treats and don't eat them saying, oh God, I feel so guilty, I shouldn't be eating this, and then eating it anyway. So in general, when it comes to what foods should we be eating, if your great-grandmother wouldn't recognize it, you probably shouldn't eat too much of it. So unfortunately, some of my favorite foods would be things like Doritos. I love Doritos, and they say share bag, but they rarely get shared when I have my hands on them. And my great-grandmother would never have heard of a Dorito. So Doritos are tortilla chips, if anyone's asking, and they're loaded with MSG, which is a flavor enhancer, which is not good for us either. But they are one of my treats, and I'll allow myself to eat them every few weeks, or if I crave them, I might buy a small bag when I'm out and about, if I'm having lunch. So I don't make a big fuss about it. I'll eat them when I want to. I'll try and have them with hummus, so at least that's giving me some protein. But in general, if it didn't exist even before the 50s or 60s, when processing changed a lot for food and freezers became a thing, you probably shouldn't be eating too much of it. So that means going back to a very simple traditional diet in general, eating good, healthy meats and fishes, or protein sources from legumes, beans, tofu, etc. And in general, people ask, should I avoid potatoes? Should I avoid milk? I think I might be intolerant to this. They're all questions to ask your doctor. But in general, I know research shows that we have evolved to be able to eat the foods that grow around us. So that's why 90% of people who live in South Asia are lactose intolerant, because they don't have a dairy industry. So they haven't evolved to digest dairy. Whereas here, 90% of us are not lactose intolerant. So we can enjoy dairy. That means full fat butter and milk and yogurt in our diet, and that's actually really good for us. So that's a general rule of thumb if you're wondering, should I be eating this? And then mindful eating is really important. Whatever you're eating, whether it's something created in a factory or something straight from the farm, to actually notice when you're eating and taste your food and be eating with presence and with consciousness is really important, because all too often we're eating while we're watching TV, or we're working on the laptop and eating a sandwich at the same time. And before we know it, the bag is empty or the plate is empty, and we've barely even tasted that food. So it's really important to see food and eating as something that's really nourishing and good for our bodies, but also it can be a mindfulness exercise where we turn off all distractions for even 5 minutes and give our full attention to the food that we're eating and really enjoy it and savor it the way it should be savored. And of course, it's perfectly fine to not be perfect all of the time. So we will have our treats, we will have our junk food, we will call in our takeaways. And in general, we can handle that. You know, our body can handle about 80% of the good stuff and 20% of the not so good stuff. And it's important not to beat yourself up about that. Even if you're at 50-50 now, or if it's 20-80 the other way, that's okay. Whatever you're at, you can just add something in today that's going to benefit you a little more. It could be as simple as, I've always used this example, buying a bag of apples, keeping them in your car, and eating one every day on your commute. That's instantly boosting your fruit intake without a huge amount of fuss or energy. So moving on from nutrition, please pop any questions into the chat or Q&A, and we'll move on to sleep. And at this time of year, we all need a lot more sleep, as I keep saying. And this is how to go about getting better sleep. And even if your sleeping hours remain the same, say if you've always had 6 hours sleep and maybe that's all you can get, you might make sure that you're getting deeper restorative sleep during those 6 hours. So that means kind of winding down the screen use and the lights that you use in your house or your office coming later in the day. So maybe going back to natural light as much as possible, or lighting candles, or having a soft bulb in a lamp beside you rather than the fluorescent overhead lighting, which really keeps our brain active and not in a good way. Maybe having a rule about what time you switch off the screens, especially if you have one in the bedroom that you use, whether it's a TV or a laptop. Excuse me. I like things like lavender oil, because lavender is a great herb to have around anyway. It will perk you up when you're feeling tired and lethargic and foggy-headed, and then it will calm you down when you're feeling stressed out. It's an adaptogenic herb, so it's really useful and also safe to use in pregnancy. But if you suffer from epilepsy, you need to be careful and check with your doctor first about using lavender at all. So bed socks and heavy blankets can make your bed more comfortable. And the way they work is bed socks will help the circulation. And if our feet are cold, our brain won't even release the sleep hormone to help us, to let us sleep. So you'll notice that yourself. You might need a hot water bottle in bed, or to wear some thicker socks to help you stay warm. And then heavy blankets, what they actually do, and they're fantastic if you know anyone who's on the autism spectrum or who suffers with sleep troubles, to use heavy blankets, whether they're just normal wool blankets or an extra duvet, or maybe you buy a specific weighted blanket. They just help calm the nervous system. It's almost like giving yourself a hug. If you want to just try that now, that feels very calming. And that weight on the body is just a calm reassurance, and it actually helps our brain and our body to relax. The way if a child is crying, we'll pick them up and give them a hug. That's how we will also be able to calm ourselves if we find it tricky to get to sleep or to stay asleep. Earplugs if you're sensitive to noise, blackout blinds, I'm sure you're on top of these things already, but I like to mention them in case there's something you've missed, and eye masks if you're sensitive to light. So there's a nice exercise you can do when you're lying in bed to help you get to sleep, and you can teach this to your families too. It's to relax the body from head to feet. And what you're doing is you're breathing, you're first connecting with the breath and breathing nice and slowly and gently. And every time you exhale, you imagine you're relaxing a different muscle group. So you can do it as a quick exercise where you take the full head and you relax all the face and skull muscles, then into the neck, then into the chest, down the arms, stomach, legs, etc. Or you can do it even more detailed where you go literally finger by finger, eyebrows, then the forehead, then the ears, and you go through every single body part. And I guarantee after 10 minutes of that, you're going to be asleep. It's a really good one to use. It's important to also keep your sleep environment as simple and minimalistic as possible, which means less clutter in the room. So clearing off any shelves or tables that might be full of trinkets, because every object there is giving you a message. So that's all keeping your brain stimulated when what you want to do is to just relax. You know that feeling when you walk into a hotel room and you just exhale and you just know you're going to have a good rest here. It's the same. You want that feeling when you walk into your bedroom. So whatever you need to do, maybe there's a pile of washing, or maybe there are too many books that you kept meaning to bring back downstairs. You need to declutter that bedroom. So even if it's the only room in the house that's decluttered, that's your sanctuary, especially coming into winter. That can be the place you go to when you need to de-stress and calm down. There's a nice breathing exercise where you breathe in for the count of 7. We're going to try it now all together. And you're exhaling for the count of 11. And it's nice and easy to remember 7, 11. So we'll start all together. First, we will exhale all together. And breathing in, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 till you're full, and out till you're empty. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Once more. In, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Last time. In, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And now return your breathing to normal. So that took about maybe 60 seconds in total. What happens when you breathe that longer exhale, the reason we do an extra 4 beats there, is because it sends a message to the fight or flight part of the brain, the very primitive amygdala that's in charge of our stress response. And it's telling our brain things are okay. If you imagine you're being chased by a tiger in caveman days, you're running and you're breathing fast and shallow. And that panting type of breathing gives us too much oxygen and it stimulates the nervous system. So this slower type of breathing, especially with that longer exhale, helps to relax the nervous system. And it's a great one to use if you suffer from stress or anxiety. You can do it at any time during the day, during a call, on a walk, in bed before sleep, and bring that into your practice just to help reset the nervous system. And I would just do it 3 times in a row and then move on. And if you've got extra time and you want to give it a little more focus, you might just sit and breathe like that for a minute or 2. Gentle stretching can be great, especially if you get into bed and find that you're a little restless. Maybe you haven't moved enough through the day and your muscles just need to be stretched out. And then a warm bath or warm drink, the way we would put a child to bed, all these will still work for us as adults. And then some people like to use a meditation app or have white noise on rather than lie there in silence. So any sleep questions, please pop them into the chat box and we'll get to them at the end. I'm just going to remind you here that exercise should be fun. It should raise the heart rate and make you sweat gently, even if it's just a simple walk. And it should be something that you enjoy doing, maybe getting a buddy along with you or a colleague to come and walk with you at lunchtime. And as I said, even 5 or 10 minutes away from the office and 5 or 10 minutes back, it all adds up. There are other nice ideas there for physical activity. that you can use, including dancing and housework. So you can see everything as going towards your daily movement. And then moving on now to minding our mental health. And if we're eating well, if we're getting enough sleep, and if we're looking after our physical needs, our mental health should be okay too. So if your mental health is not okay, if you find you're having intrusive thoughts or negative thoughts, or if you find you're in a low mood for any length of time, usually about 2 weeks, we say, go to your GP and just get them to have a check, maybe get bloods done and see if there's anything you're deficient in or anything that you need to do or change up to help you. So treating yourself well and minding yourself, putting your own needs first helps you feel better. You're filling your own cup, and therefore you can care for other people and go through with your responsibilities. But very often we are not even on our list of priorities, especially when we have busy lives and family responsibilities. So here was a study here done during Christmas time by the Mayo Clinic, and they found that 69% of adults feel overwhelmed because they don't have enough time to get things done. And 69% of adults also feel stressed about their finances coming up to the holiday season. So it just shows you that, and I'm sure it's even higher since COVID, but it just shows you that we have created this culture of needing to do and spend and eat. And it's just this crazy excess for the whole month of December. And then it's the opposite side of the coin. It's like starving yourself and not spending any money or being in debt and, being completely stressed out in January. And this is not healthy. This is not sustainable, and it's not advisable. So we need to really mind ourselves and decide where our priorities lie and say no to the things that will stretch us coming up to Christmas. So we've practiced already the 7-11 breath, and I've described the body scan. Another nice breathing exercise is to breathe in and think of the number 1, and out thinking of the number 2. So it's like counting sheep, and the numbers are giving your brain a focus. And what happens when you do these mindful breathing exercises, you're focusing on your body, focusing on the breath, it's actually giving your brain a rest. So if you have an anxious brain, if you're always thinking and trying to solve problems or worried about the future, those precious few moments when you're just concentrating on your body and your breathing, they give that part of your brain a complete rest. And then you can go back to your other activities with more mental focus and a relaxed body that has less of the stress hormones in it. So it's really beneficial to do these in small increments through your days to release that pressure valve, so it's not building up and then you're exploding at people in the evening or the weekends. So I've mentioned already positive screen time, as in staying away from apps or people and unfollowing different accounts that make you feel bad or guilty or that you're not doing enough. Spending positive time with people who boost you up and bring you joy, because we all know there are people who trigger us and who cause us distress or suck our energy, and it takes us days to recover from an interaction with them. So minimizing those interactions for now while we're trying to get through this difficult period or this stressful period, and maximizing seeing and chatting to people who bring us joy and boost us up. And I find it difficult to even find time to have a phone call with a friend because we're all so busy. But what we do now is we leave voice notes for each other. So on WhatsApp, we record a voice message for a minute or two, giving our news. And then when the person is free, they'll listen to it and reply with their own voice note. So it's like a distanced phone call, and it's very relaxed, and it's really enjoyable. It's almost as good as a phone call, but it's not, it's more personal than just a text. So I'd recommend that if you can figure that out. And I've mentioned social media already, keeping everything very calm and not just going from the phone as soon as you wake up to the laptop and work to then the TV at night and having screens all day long. It's really important to have screen-free time as well. So there are some ideas here for some more self-care practices. Getting outdoors is really important, especially to let sunlight in to the retina, which gives us that good circadian rhythm and helps our body know when it's time to be awake and when we should be asleep, and keeping that natural flow going on, rather than spending all day under fluorescent lights, which gives a false sense of daylight to your body and brain. Eating healthy foods when you can, and maybe baking your own banana breads with a little less sugar than the ones you might buy if you have time. And if you're going to do any baking, I would suggest baking 2 or 3 times the amount and freezing some for later, because it is a big effort to bake anything. So always think ahead and have something else in the freezer that you can pull out to save you time in the kitchen as well. We'll move on. Most importantly, again, it's about making time for you. and choosing which traditions no longer serve your needs. Maybe you grew up with a certain type of tradition. Maybe it was following family members or church services, etc. And maybe the people who were putting the energy into those traditions didn't have full-time jobs. I know not everybody's parents both worked full-time when they were growing up. So maybe they had more time to put into these traditions, such as baking their own cakes and puddings and gift wrapping everything perfectly. And maybe you need to do things differently or not do them at all in some cases. So maybe tonight, making a list of things that you do want to include this Christmas, like if you could create Christmas from scratch, what activities would you be busy at? And which things actually don't really apply to you anymore? So you can let them go without guilt because they've had their time, you know about them, you've done them, but maybe they don't need to be part of your Christmases going forward. That can be tricky, but that is one great way to save time and energy. So in conclusion, coming to the end of the slides, and we're going to go into the Q&A now, excuse me, your body and mind need nutritious food, rest, movement, and relaxation. And that's every day. And I don't mean rest and relaxation just when you're asleep. I mean taking time during the workday to put your feet up, to rest, to turn away from the screen and just stare out the window while you drink a cup of tea for 2 minutes and then go back to your tasks. So you're not just going from one crisis management situation to another, that you're really feeling like you're topping up your own battery through the day. And it's really good to check in with yourself every day, maybe once or twice a day to begin with. What do I need right now? Maybe you've been putting off eating because you've been too busy. So I need to eat. Maybe I need to drink. Maybe I need to visit the toilet. Maybe I need to stretch. And these are things that we can neglect. And then they do add up over time to make us feel more tense. And then creating your own version of Christmas, as I mentioned, to suit your ever-changing needs. So I hope you've got some nice tips out of this and you're feeling positive and looking forward to the holiday season coming up. I'd really appreciate a Google review if you don't mind, please. I think I have 8 now, and it would be great to have a few more just to help spread the word about the work that we do at the Wellness Clinic. You can check out our website too if you like. And I'd like to wish you all and your families a Merry Christmas, and I hope you do get some nice rest and relaxation this Christmas. So before I look at the Q&A, I'm going to just answer 2 questions that came in advance anonymously. And I think I may have kind of covered some of this already in the talk. So the first question was, I have a very short period of time off for the Christmas break, just 3 days. Can you ask Niamh as to how I can make the best of this short downtime to recharge from my already busy role? So it's not enough to go at 100 miles an hour for the whole year and then just have 3 days off. You know yourself, you're not going to get the best out of it. So I would say start now by winding down anything that you can take off your responsibilities or your list, and start winding down now for the whole month of December so that you're not overstretched and you really will get the benefit of those 3 days. And I'm sure those 3 days will include possibly hosting or cooking or visiting people. So there might only be 1 day or a half day where you get to actually recharge. So I would try and maximize the time you spend now, the time that you have to rest. So your weekends, your lunch breaks, your evenings, they need to be your or and or time as well. You can't just wait till those magic 3 days off because you don't know what life is going to throw at you either. So that's what I would say. I hope that's answered your question. The question 2, can I just actually check, Francesca, are we still all live and we're still connected?
Yeah, thanks, Niamh. That's great. I can still hear you and see you.
So question 2, knowing that I will indulge over the Christmas, has she got any suggestions for detoxing foods or even supplements for that post-Christmas period and restarting the new year in a healthier place? So I think you can imagine what I'm going to say. I don't promote any diets. I don't promote any synthetic or chemical supplements or anything like that. I think you just need to eat as well as you can now. Enjoy what you enjoy over Christmas and continue eating as well as you can in January, rather than binging and putting on half a stone and feeling terrible for the month of January when then you feel like I can't fit into my clothes and I need to starve myself. That's really unhealthy, and that's a very damaging place to be mentally. So I would say, and also be aware, please, that your body detoxes constantly. Whatever you're eating and drinking immediately gets processed, diluted, and detoxed by the body. That's how the body works. So we don't need to buy any detoxing supplements or follow any detoxing diets. We just need to eat as well as we can, stay well hydrated. And if you want to take a multivitamin because you feel like this time of year you get a bit low on your natural resources, go for that as well and choose plant-based ones that you'll be using all the goodness in them rather than synthetic ones, which most of that just goes through you without being absorbed. So I hope that has answered your question. I'm sorry there's no magic answer for that either. So moving on to the chat box now. Thanks, we have loads of comments here. I'm just going to open them and I'll stop sharing my slides. So Francesca has sent the link there in the chat box, so please check that out. It's a really great cause to help out others in need at this time of year. So somebody here has said, I presume it's okay to read your name out. Niall has said, time spent in the moment with loved ones. So that's obviously something you value and that you want to have for yourself this Christmas. And that's so important. I think that's all that matters really, Niall, isn't it? I mean, that's what we're working for. And that's what really means most to any of us. And we know, I think the older we get, the more we lose our loved ones, the more we realize that time is the most precious. It's not about what's in your stocking or what's under the tree for you. It's about just being together and making those memories. So that's really lovely. Thank you for sharing that. James says, Happy Christmas to everyone. Thank you, James, and same to you. Ruth says, apologies if this has been mentioned before, but I joined a little late. Would you recommend a sunrise alarm clock? Is there evidence that they help with wake up time? Thinking of buying it for Christmas presents for parents, but not sure if they're worth it. They can be. If your parents still need to get up early, maybe they still work and they have a time to get up by. I know my mother-in-law is in her 70s, she's retired, and she likes to sleep late because she's widowed now and she finds the days are quite long, and she's very outgoing and sociable. But she finds without her husband, who she cared for a while, she doesn't like to wake up early, especially in winter. She would rather wake up when it's naturally bright. So it depends on the person receiving it. I haven't used a sunrise alarm clock, but I imagine what they do is they simulate natural light and they gently brighten the room as they're waking you up. So that's a very nice way to wake up rather than a jolt of a very loud sound beside you. So I hope that's helped answer your question, Ruth. It may suit some people, absolutely. And then other people would rather maybe sleep in until it naturally gets bright, depending on what they have going on. Dee has said, many thanks for a great presentation. Thank you, Dee. Love your promotion of healthy eating with the odd treat. Absolutely, Dee. And in research, for research for my work and also through my private life, I have tried different diets over the years. I'm 44 now, and my mom marched me down to Weight Watchers at 19 because I had joined college, I had started drinking alcohol, and I gained a lot of weight or whatever at the time. So I have dabbled in and out of different ways of eating, and not one of them has ever lasted or helped me in any way. All they have done is give me hang-ups and issues around eating healthy. So now that I'm a parent, it's made me really aware of my own eating habits, and I want my children to see me eating everything all the time so that they don't feel any food is bad. I'm not meaning I'm eating everything all the time, but that they see me enjoying chocolate, they see me enjoying crisps when we watch a movie, and there's a time and place for everything. And we also then cook healthy foods and eat them together too. For the most part, we're not perfect, but I think that's the only sustainable way to do it. And if you look at other cultures that don't have this huge amount of junk food being advertised to them, they don't have the same culture of eating that kind of stuff, and they don't normalize that either. That's very seldom they would have those. So Dee goes on to say, if you did want to cut down sugar, are there any no sugar treats that I can get in for the Christmas period? That's a great question. So I have personal experience of this because, number one, I did try going no sugar for a while. I actually gave it up for 3 months when I was suffering with arthritis symptoms in my hands in my mid-30s. And I think now it was caused by having 3 pregnancies kind of close together, and that my body was just depleted because my diet wasn't good enough to replace what it needed. But I cut sugar out. And again, I'm the type of personality where it made me obsess about sugar, and I could not wait to start eating sugar again. And of course, I lost weight and my symptoms improved in those 3 months, but then I went back to my normal habits. So the no sugar options you'll see at the cash desks in supermarkets, you'll see sugar-free sweets, you'll see sugar-free gum. sugar-free yogurts. If they still taste sweet, they're all containing phenylalanine, which is a laxative and a diuretic, and that's going to take its toll. So it's important to know some people can't eat that, and nobody should eat that in large quantities. It's a false sugar. So what I would do is I would instead try and make my own cookies. At their very basic, you can just mash up bananas with oats and mix in a few nuts or chocolate chips, and that is a very simple oat biscuit to make. And you just cook them in the oven on a greased pan or a piece of greaseproof paper for about 20 minutes, maybe turn them over once to dry them out. And that's a healthier type of cookie. Or you can bake your own muffins or cakes with less sugar than normal. So again, spending loads of money on these amazing foods that say we've no sugar, it's not always going to be good for you health-wise either. So you might try some of them. They might be nice for stocking fillers, but they would not be part of your everyday diet, just so you know that. And I also mean that for diet yogurts, because and especially low-fat yogurts, they've all had thickeners and gums added to them to replace the fat that's missing. And we really need that fat for our brain development, especially children. And then instead of sugar to sweeten them or fruits, they're using false sugars, aspartame and saccharin, which all create metabolic changes in the body and actually make you hold on to weight, and also can damage your hormone balance, especially at midlife. So it's all things that I would avoid, especially going through perimenopause myself. I just have sugar in small amounts and then try and enjoy my own treats, or just the odd piece of chocolate or biscuits, etc. And then Anne shares with us that, so thanks Steve for that. I could go on about that forever because I do a whole other talk about sugar, but I won't bore you with everything now. Anne Sykes says, avoiding the toxic people is key, I have found. And that is huge, Anne. And some of us are still learning. I'm still learning, but I've been through enough tricky friendships and relationships, I think, to know some of the warning signs now, but I'm still making mistakes. And if you're involved constantly with somebody who drains you, it can really take its toll on your mental health. So sometimes the first key is to go to your GP and maybe organize some counseling, or maybe you have an EAP through your workplace that can help you recognize when somebody's interactions with you are making you feel bad. Sometimes they'll turn things back on you and blame you for things they've done. And a lot of self-work needs to go into that, about putting in boundaries, etc. So that's another thing I do work with people, is on boundaries. So it's amazing if you can see that and just keep your interactions to a limit, to low contact. James says, thank you, Niamh. It was nice to take some time out today to get some great tips, and happy Christmas. Thank you very much, James. That's great to hear. I'm going to move into the Q&A now. Thank you. So somebody here says, hi, you've said that full fat milk is good for you. As someone who has high cholesterol, I've been told to reduce or avoid dairy. For me, it is therefore not good. Can you clarify? Yes, so recent research shows now, please check with your doctor, but this is what I've learned in my studies for nutrition science, that high cholesterol is actually caused more by sugary foods and high amounts of white flour and refined grains in our diet, which white flour is in everything, pasta, biscuits, loads of our products that we eat, breads, etc. So some of the research now says that we can still have full fat milk and dairy and eggs are not to blame either. And instead we need to limit our sugar and our refined grains and have more whole grains in our diet. So please double check that, especially if you're on medication, but you should be seeing somebody who's up to date with their information. And the dairy thing, I think, was overturned in the 90s. So it's been a while now that we know that fat is good for us. So the anonymous person here says, thanks a million, Niamh, trying to set more boundaries around parents' expectations for Christmas. So that's obviously your parents, finding it really hard to manage the guilt for not giving them their Christmas and just going along with the old traditions when it doesn't serve me and my family anymore. So there you go. This is a really common dilemma. You're in the middle. You've got children in the younger generation and parents of the older generation who want to do things the same way all the time. And it's about keeping them happy, honoring their traditions, but also giving your children, and most importantly yourself, the kind of Christmas that you need. So I hope you get a little closer to that this year. It may take a few years to ease into a new way of doing it, but for us, I suppose the children became the excuse that we used. We said they can't handle doing X, Y, Z anymore. We need to keep it more simple. We need to do this on that day and break things up to give us more rest time over the few Christmas days. So I hope you find your way And I'm sure you will. Maybe just talking to your partner and your kids about what you want to prioritize, and then letting your parents know this has been decided for this year, but we'll still do that, etc. Best of luck with that. It is tricky. So someone else says, thanks so much for bringing up diet culture. It's such a difficult topic at this time of year and so dangerous mentally for so many. Absolutely. And I've had lots of people come to me with eating disorders trying to work with me on their nutrition. And it's something I'm not qualified to work on, but very aware of how many of us have disordered ideas around food. So there's very specific help and counselling for that. The first step is, again, your GP, who should have lots of resources for you. But it's huge, and food is such a big thing around Christmas, and it can be a very triggering time for people. Thanks for bringing that up. Someone here has a question on sleep. They say, I get about 6 to 7 hours sleep per night. Are there any studies or research that specify what minimum sleep our bodies need? This comes up every time I do a talk on sleep. Some of us get by on 4 or 5. Some of us need 8 or 9 hours a night. It depends on your gender. It depends on the time of life you're at. So perimenopausal women, which are women usually, or people who menstruate, not just women, in their late 30s, right up to their mid 50s, can need more sleep at certain times of the month. And then they will naturally want less sleep at other times of the month, going by your menstrual cycle. If you're sick, you'll need more sleep. And if it's winter, you'll need more sleep. If you're in summertime and you're feeling at the top of your health, you'll need less sleep. So there is no minimum or maximum amount, and it changes even every day, or depending on your immune system, if you're fighting bugs, etc. So it's really about waking up and seeing, do I feel refreshed and restored? And if not, if you've had a restless night's sleep, you might look into maybe supplementing with magnesium and checking with your GP if there's anything going on physically. Sometimes we'll have nasal polyps that affect our breathing and we won't fall into a deep sleep, etc. So that's another huge topic. I'm afraid I don't have time to do any more on that. Someone else here, and this is the last question, I think. How can you encourage family members to put the phones away over the Christmas break and enjoy time together? I think 3 out of the 5 of the family are completely addicted. Well, I have a 14-year-old and an 11-year-old, and they both have phones. So that's a great question. I think just to agree together that we will watch this movie together, or we will eat this meal together, and we'll all put our phones in one place, and then we'll pick them up at the end, so they don't think it's gone for the night. But if you ask them for maybe short amounts first, 20 minutes, half an hour, and build it up that way. But best of luck. That's a constant struggle for me too. So we've come to the end. Francesca, I'll pass over to you, and thanks everyone for your participation. Happy Christmas to you all.
Thanks so much, Niamh. I have to say that was really wonderful, and thank you so much for powering through all the questions that came through there. It was great to get them all covered. I have to say I really took loads from that myself. I particularly love the piece around beginning now. If we want to get the best out of that Christmas period, that we actually have an opportunity now over the coming weeks to kind of really build up those rest and restorative habits as well. So loved that so much more that I was scribbling down. But also, just I suppose if people want to get in touch with you directly or find out more about your clinic, if you just want to name again around the contact details for that.
It's the wellnessclinic.ie, and I'll pop my email in the chat box now.
Oh, brilliant. And other than that, I suppose I just want to say to everybody on the call, thank you so much for being here. But also, as it is our last webinar of the year, I think it's been a lovely way to finish it out, and thank you so much for that, Niamh. But as well to say thank you for everyone who's joined us throughout the year, and we're really looking forward to 2023 and hopefully bringing some support and new ideas around well-being for people into the new year as well. So thank you so much again, Niamh, and thank you to Chris in the background who's helped us so much during the year with all of these events as well. And happy Christmas to everybody, and happy New Year for 2023. Thanks so much again.
Thank you. Mind yourselves. Bye-bye.
Take care.